Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review of the Harbor Freight 69413 stainless steel, 304 stainless steel zip ties or cable ties. These are the infamous marine zip ties. They're sold all over online. There are different grades, 316s, even 316 stainless steel, and even much better grades. Harbor Freight does stock these, but it appears that they are now tapering down just to these 12-inch ones. I think the best sellers, which is unfortunate, because they also used to sell the 8-inch versions. These are 3/16 of an inch wide. They also used to sell 8mm or 5/16 200-pound rated ones. These are truly heavy duty. These are the smaller 3/16 are rated for 115 pounds. And these are, infamous in the marine industry when you need to tie something up and not have it rust or come loose. All sorts of applications for these zip ties because they are stainless steel and they are corrosion resistant. They don't make them out of like tool steels because just being so thin that they just corrode too easily and just fail. These do have some, drawbacks. They are metal, so in situations where they're flexing a lot, they can fatigue and fail, and so you need to be careful of that. Many times people will use these on to zip tie up electrical wires, and you have to be real careful. You have to have an extra layer of plastic because they are a sharp sheet metal zip tie, and they can easily cut through the insulation. So you want to make sure you're using these in the right and appropriate situations. Many times plastic will be better because they make very thick and heavy duty, 150-pound nylon zip ties. And those will take a lot of fatigue and cycles, etc. As will these if they're used in the right situations. This plastic is less likely to fatigue. Now, how these lock into place is they have the little sheet metal goes to this little stamped bit up here, the little locking end. They fold it over, and then you would actually take the little cable tie, and you would just fold it over like this, and then it just goes in here, and there's a tiny little ball bearing, and you can see the top of this is actually tapered. So when this goes through, it gets under the ball bearing, and then when you try to pull it back out, it causes the ball bearing to roll on that tapered track, kind of locking itself into the zip tie. One point, and I'll show in a minute, is that you always fold over the end. There can be difficult to install because they are sheet metal. They can cut you easily, so you have to use pliers to pull them tight. And then, of course, once you cut the ends of them off to flush them up, once you put them on, it's a very sharp, it's a razor sharp end. So you also have to be careful about that too. What I mean by how these work is when you put the end of the cable tied, this is exactly the mechanism that's in there. This would be essentially, let me get the larger one. This shape here is essentially the, come on camera. I don't have enough material, but it's essentially the same taper. So when we put the tab into these, it goes under the ball, if we can get this to cooperate. And then when you try to pull it out, you can see how the ball rolls on the taper, and the harder you pull, the tighter that it gets. But the reason that you can't just leave them like that is grit can get in there, all sorts of stuff. They can rattle themselves loose. So you really should fold over the ends. And let me even demonstrate the application of one of these. All right, here we go. We've got a couple of breaker bars. I'll actually just go ahead and zip tie these together. And then I'll break this just so you can see what kind of the failure mode. Standard zip ties, unless they're really old and brittle, when they fail, it's right at the connection point. And I suspect it's the same thing here. So with these, it's just pretty simple. You take it, put it through the end. Sometimes this piece of sheet metal gets a little bunged up or it's a little dented there or something. But generally speaking, they're pretty easy to use. You just put it through like this. Take some pliers and start pulling this thing tight. Come on now. Kind of got to help it along. Be careful with what you're doing. You always have to be pretty careful, and you just got to inch it up like that. And if you really want to make sure they don't go anywhere, you do something where you fold it over. Whoop, there we go, just like that. It's additionally hooked so it really can't get loose. And then, like, these are the little Harbor Freight heavy-duty scissors, and then you just, well, come on now. Oh, these used to work on these pretty well. Look at that. I munched that all up. Oh, I probably dulled them cutting too many of those. Well, it happens. Those little scissors actually have cut quite a few of these, so obviously I just reached the limit. So that's generally how they work, just like any other zip tie. I just wanted to show that tip where you do fold it over. And then when you cut them off, man, they do get sharp. And what's kind of nice about it being folded over is when you do cut it off, you can kind of hit the very little end of it and get it to curve inward, so it just isn't sticking out and likely to hurt and cut you. So let me go in and actually just deliberately wrench these two breaker bars apart, and we'll see how it fails. It's actually pretty heavy duty. Wow, I actually spun that all the way around 360 degrees in a knot, and it still hadn't failed. There it goes. So they'll take quite a bit of force and twisting, just because stainless steel is a little bit more malleable. It's a little bit, I would say, softer than other types of steels, tool steels. So it's a little more durable and can take a bit more punishment in certain types of situations. And then just get one last close look at that. We can see that actually it wasn't any issue with the clasp at all. It was just where we had twisted it up so much that it ended up shearing it. And the strength is 115 pounds of shearing strength, but for my efforts to twist that apart with two 18-inch, or they're about 18 or 20-inch breaker bars, wasn't much. 10 pounds of force. So these really are not a good idea in places where it's going to take a lot of twisting force, unless you special order these heavier duty ones. Of course, Harbor Freight used to stock, but they don't stock anymore. They only stock these 12-inch 3/16 ones, but still, it's incredibly hard in any town to find stainless steel zip ties or steel zip ties of any type actually stocked. And I think they run about $750. This is a quick little addendum because I was taking a closer look at this, so I want to make sure everybody has all the details. When I twisted it around, you can actually see that I was noticing the tang that I had bent over was actually straight again, so it actually even sucked it back, unfolded it, and then you can see that little ridge, that track, is about 3/4 of an inch long, so it actually skidded. You can see how hard the ball bearing presses. It's actually digging into the steel. I mean, there's a physical groove there, but it still did skid and then unfolded under that extreme situation. So I did want to point that out. That even though these are rated for 115 pounds of tensile strength, it is kind of difficult, and it is true under very tough situations or where it's being repeatedly impacted. Yeah, these things can slip, and so just wanted to make sure I added that. Review here. I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.